Hello everyone and welcome back to the King of the Tomb Invitational. So this is going to be the final match in our opening rounds here, and it will indeed be a showdown between the fighting Mongooses, who are going to be playing the Dwarves in Bretonnia, and they're going to be facing off against Team Brohammer, who's going to be playing the Wood Elves and the Dark Elves. So as far as the fighting Mongooses, it looks like they're going to be doing a very rune-heavy and somewhat of a Death Star composition. So when I first saw this army selection in the declared teams, I actually thought they would be doing something like a bunch of cannons up on the hill and using the Bretonnian cav to protect the back line while the Dawi artillery just basically tore things to shreds. But it looks like rather than that, they're going to be having a very, very aggressive headstrong formation. So they're going to be using the High King Thorgrim, who does have the Great Book of Grudges. You can see here, this is going to give 9 melee attack. On top of that, the Runesmith also has a very similar rune. I think it's called like the Rune of Stromny Redbeards. Let's actually go ahead and pause so we can take a look here, and let's see if I can get it, and I did. The Master Rune of Groth One Eye. So that's going to be +8 leadership. And then I know that the Master Engineer also has a rune, and I think it's called like the Rune of Slow, the Rune of something slowness. Yeah, and it gives negative 12% speed and lowers the charge bonus of nearby troops. So basically, they're just going to have a very heavy Death Star using the Fey Enchantress to debuff the enemies and using the Dwarven Runes to buff up these cav, which is going to be really strong. If you get some Grail Knights here, and look at that, 47 melee attack on these guys, that is heavy duty. And on top of that, it looks like there's a Grail Relic right here, and I think there's actually 2 of them in total. But these Dwarf Infantry are just going to have massive leadership. So it's going to be a very, very grindy fight for this army composition over here. So for Team Brohammer, it looks like we're going to be getting some hardwood from Durthu over here. And Durthu's actually not a terrible choice against Bretonnia. Bretonnia doesn't have the best armor. Well, they don't have armor-piercing missiles. So they have to use their Grail Guardians and these kind of troops to surround Durthu and drag him down. But, if he's surrounded by Eternal Guard and, some of these durable Wood Elf Infantry, well, I guess Wood Elf Infantry are a little bit squishy, but high leadership. So they're going to be staying there for most of the battle. He should be okay. So on top of that, it looks like they do have a Dark Elf army over here with Hargoneth Executioners, some Dark Riders with shields, maybe to harass the back line. They were probably expecting some Dawi artillery or thunders or backline pressure, so maybe that's why they went so heavy with cav. They have some Cold One Knights for anti-large and armor piercing, so they're going to try and contest the cav game with Bretonnia, which I think is going to go pretty south, especially considering that these Bretonnian Knights are getting some buffs from the Dwarves, but I don't know, it depends on where they take the fight. For example, if the Bretonnian Knights are like over here, they might be able to have a decent fight with the support of Malekith and Soul Stealer, but if they try and fight them in that Dawi Death Star with all that rune support, man, that is going to be ugly. So some War Dancers here, which I don't know how they're going to do against the Dwarf front line. It's going to be tricky, and also they're not really going to perform terribly well against Grail Guardians and Elite Bretonnian Cav. Some more Hargoneth Executioners, which will do just fine against the Dawi front line, some Spears, and Blackheart Corsairs. So without further ado, guys, let's get this show on the road. So right now, you can see the fighting Mongooses are advancing through the valley here. So if the Wood Elves and Team Brohammer kind of advance, catch them down in the valley here and get them while they're on the low ground, that could definitely be a pretty good advantage. But yeah, I definitely wasn't expecting this. The Dwarves also do have the Peak Gate Guard, so they have some very, very heavy-duty infantry, and also the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, and I think they do have Norgrimling's Ironbreakers, so a very, very elite army here. The Wood Elves do have some Wildwood Rangers and some heavy AP units and Hargoneth Executioners, but I really think like this ruinous style of play is going to be pretty cool. So in the front line, we're getting some Treekin coming in, obviously going to try and anchor things down, but they will do nothing against the Dwarves. I mean, they have really, really low melee attack as is, and they do magic damage. So the Blasting Charge is coming in, attacking those Wild Riders, and you can see the Bretonnian Cav, just like piranhas, just swarming onto that. And look at this. This is like the last charge of the Rohirrim right here, just getting in there. Fey Enchantress is also going to be pushing in. So these Wood Elf troops, like, I can't even get in there and get you guys a camera angle. It's just such carnage. We're like, oh, let's go fight these guys. Then all of a sudden, this massive onslaught of cav and just angry Dawi just charge in there, and those Wildwood Rangers are just going to be banished into another realm of existence here. So I definitely like this composition. It's pretty cool. I was waiting to see some Dwarven Rune play, and it looks like they're getting a really good initial fight here, just shattering these Wildwood Rangers, taking out these War Dancers. And I'm a little bit, the War Dancer pick's a little bit questionable here. I mean, they're good against Bretonnian infantry, but, oftentimes Bretonnian's just going to be used for their cav, I feel, in 2v2 most of the time, but maybe there's some mind games going on. On the far side, you can see some Longbeards are holding off this formation right here. There's some Witch Elves, some Azurai Spears. They really need to get around here and fight some of these cav. It looks like, yeah, they're pushing over. Maybe they just have a very delayed kind of angle of getting around here. So, it's just a very grindy Death Star. Very hard to tell what's going on. You can see Thorgrim Grudgebearer is in the middle of the pack, kind of buffing these troops. And there's just a wall of Bretonnian lances and spears. And the Wood Elves are trying to fight it off with some Azurai Spears. I don't even know what's happening. There's just too much. A Pendulum going down on the far side back here. I think that was from the Branch Wraith of Team Brohammer here. And Durthu's in pretty good shape. You can see he's fighting some of the Dawi here. And I mean, Durthu's might be their saving grace here. I mean, he's going to be very tough to drag down, but if the Wood Elves that are supporting him are able to be, grinded out by the Dwarves and these Bretonnians, you can see the Lamentation of Despair going down there as well, and just all kinds of magic This is probably the most chaotic game I've cast so far in this tournament. It's really hard to tell what's going on, but basically just the Bretonnian cav right here have a massive Death Star of just these Grail Knights, and the Grail Knights aren't the sustained combat. They're actually a shot cav, but it looks like they're a little bit pinned. The Dark Elves have a massive formation here, and they are getting through these Longbeards. So you can see the Dwarven formation here on the western side of the battlefield is collapsing, and that means that these guys are then going to be surrounded. But look at them. They're getting the Rune of Oath and Steel, putting them up to 150 armor right now for a moment there. It was actually 120, then it went up to 135, so there must be Dwarven runes by giving them some extra armor. I think it's passive rune. You can see High King Thorgrim is going to be putting them up to 47 melee attacks. Soul Stealer going down on them. But you can also see that the fighting Mongooses are going to give them Earthblood as well. But the Bretonnian Knights are starting to get worn down. You can see their HP is trickling everywhere. These Azrai Spears and some of these Cold One Knights are starting to push through a little bit, but there still is an elite Dwarven pocket. So Thorgrim Grudgebearer right here, he has a Rune of Negation, which is also probably going to affect all of these guys with 22% ward save. And man, this is just a grindy battle here. So you can see there's just piles and piles of Dark Elf infantry. What I would probably recommend doing if you're in a situation like this, you don't want to be piling like this. You want to get your Corsairs and your Azrai Spears, pull them up and around and push this part of the formation. You can then get like a full wrap because there's so many troops here that are literally just like walking into a meat right here. So blasting charges continue to go down, but again, they also brought the Fey Enchantress, who does have a Mortis Engine effect here, and you can see the Fey plus some of these Knights here are actually wearing down these Hargoneth Executioners, and you can see Big Daddy Durthu. He has some Dragon Ball Z from the Fey, but Durthu, let's go ahead and see how he's doing. So he's fighting some of these Knights, cleaving some of the Dwarves. Definitely probably one of the better picks of Team Brohammer. You can see he's doing his Optimus Prime stab there, definitely making these people proud. But that Fey Enchantress aura just slowly draining these Hargoneth Executioners as they just kind of wash up against these Grail Guardians. And the Grail Guardians are the sustained combat variant. So these guys are rocking 46 melee attack, which I think they start like with 38 or 36. So that's a pretty big buff in terms of their overall stats. And of course the Dwarven Runes are going to be jacking them up pretty good as well. So Thorgrim and the boys in here, and this is going to be really tough. I mean, this is a couple of very, very elite Dwarven Lords. Durthu might have the stopping power to get through him, but I don't know. I'm looking around here, and the Dark Elves are looking very tattered. You can see the Blackheart Corsairs and the Hargoneth Executioners are just pretty much done for. I mean, there are some not Blackheart Corsairs, yeah, just I think those are just Hargoneth over there. But the Blackheart Corsairs here on this side of the battlefield, not really doing a whole lot. Norgrimling's Ironbreakers have taken, you know, maybe 10, 20 models in loss here, but they also have a Grail Relic Way here, I think somewhere nearby. Let's actually see. Oh, that was actually just a questing knight there, but yeah, these guys are not going to buckle anytime soon. They're actually at 116 leadership, so definitely not afraid of these Dark Elves. Just you know, doing their Dawi karate kicks and pushing back this inexorable tide of Wood Elves here. And you know, man, I cannot speak volumes about how useful it would have been, because I think they were trying to mind game one another a little bit hard. So instead of seeing a very traditional Wood Elf build, they're like, oh, let's get a Death Star going with Treekin and different things like that, and Wildwood Rangers. But had they had like some Way Watchers and things like that, and the Dark Elves brought a couple groups of Dark Shards, they would have torn this Death Star to shreds for sure. But in trying to play this like grindy infantry game with the dwarves who are like specialists in this, it's going to be really, really tough. So you can see Thorgrim here is fending off these foul Dark Elves. The Knights of Bretonnia still holding strong with their Grail Relic Way over here. Over here you can see that Durthu is a little bit pinned down, so some of these Grail Knights with their Melkoths being cast on them by the Branch Wraith are doing a pretty good job at dragging down Durthu. And do they have any sort of buffs? I don't think so. Looks like the Branch Wraith is coming in. Some of these Azrai Spears are going to get a rear charge here. Definitely drop some of that Wood Elf gymnastics karate. Oh, that's actually pretty cool when they plant the spear and just do like a flying kick on those Knights. I don't think I've ever seen that one before. So Durthu here is getting taken down a little bit. You can see the bounce power is very heavily in the favor of the fighting Mongooses. Durthu is basically the last bastion of hope. And that's it. So the Dwarven and Bretonnian Death Star, though it is looking very beat up. The Grail Guardians are tattered. It was basically just the leadership. So the Fey and the High King Thorgrim here and this Master Engineer are also in pretty much impeccable shape. But yeah, so they basically just both tried to mind game each other, and I think the Dawi and Bretonnian mind game was the one that was a little bit superior in regards to its army composition. But Way Watchers would have just been able to tear apart those Knights, I think, and also some more missile pressure from the Dark Elves, some Shades, some Dark Shards, things like that would have just been game-changing. But obviously they both tried to play that very grindy infantry style, and it just went south there. So let's go ahead and take a look at the breakdown and see who performed. So over here for Team Brohammer, which is Jonton and Sakarma, and of course you guys know that is Jonton of Total Brohammer. They have a YouTube channel over there. But yeah, so I mean, the army composition isn't bad here. You have Eternal Guard to give you some AP. He probably brought War Dancers just in case the Bretonnians went heavy on infantry. Azrai Spears and Wildwood Rangers are pretty safe picks. Granted, they did get sandwiched pretty hard there in that valley. And the Treekin, I don't know, maybe it's just a little bit fluffy, but I feel like Treekin aren't really good against either of these factions. So let's look at Sakarma's build. So Harganeth, they did some heavy lifting against the Dawi infantry. Probably one of the few things in both of their comps that were able to grind through that core, but ultimately I think it just wasn't enough. And honestly, Cold Wind Knights just kind of suck. I think like for AP options, you probably just want to get like Dark Shards or things like that. Yeah, so let's go ahead and take a look over here at the Fighting Mongooses. So a very cool composition, stacking all these different runes in conjunction with the Fey Enchantress's melee debuff really gives them the leg up in that sustained fighting. So it's pretty cool. I don't think it's as strong of a Death Star as like the Tomb King's Vampire Counts, and it suffers from the similar weaknesses, but it's even worse because, like, for example, if you brought a ton of range units, you could pick these guys apart, force them out, and force the Bretonnian Knights out of their pocket from where you could hopefully deal with them. But yeah, it was definitely some fun stuff. So very well played to both teams. And guys, we're going to jump over to Game 2 in this best of 3 series between the Fighting Mongooses and Team Brohammer. So thanks again for watching, guys, and we'll see you in Game 2. Alright guys, and now we're back with Game 2 between Team Brohammer and the Fighting Mongooses. So on this side of the battlefield, we're going to have Team Brohammer playing as the Warriors of Chaos in Bretonnia. So this is definitely going to be quite a bit of fun to watch because we finally get to see the Grail Reliquae teamed up with Armored Chaos Trolls. So, I mean, the Grail Reliquae on paper basically addresses all of the weaknesses of Chaos Trolls. You can see their leadership is going to be 65, which is somewhat similar to like baseline infantry, and on top of that, they are going to be immune to psychology. So these guys are going to be absolute world beaters if they're able to stay near this Grail Reliquae. Aside from that, it looks like there is a lot of Bretonnian infantry, so some men-at-arms with polearms to deal with some anti-large threats. And they were facing off against 2 greenskin. So the greenskin players, the Fighting Mongooses, actually locked in double bloody hands, which on paper, you're probably thinking, you're like, oh, we're going to be seeing Savage Orcs or, I mean, some other sort of shenanigans using a greenskin style of build, maybe with Wurzog, but they actually went Mass Goblins. So double bloody hands, Mass Goblins for the Fighting Mongooses in the King of the Tomb Invitational here. So for the rest of the Team Brohammer team, though, we do have men-at-arms with polearms. We have some peasant bowmen here, just a little bit of a different Bretonnian army composition. I would probably say more well-rounded. They have some Grail Knights out here in the flanks to defend against Cav. And it looks like they do also have the Fey Enchantress, I think. And some peasant mobs out here, which are actually a really good tool for kind of screening Cav harass. So if there's like Death's Creepers and Morgreps and Ancient Marauders and things like that, just kind of chase them with some peasants and waste their ammunition, and these guys will definitely have a good time. But aside from that, for Chaos, it looks like there is a Chaos Sorcerer Lord with the Lord of Death getting a pretty good little breath attack there on the Fighting Mongooses' harass squad. Some more Chaos Trolls with another Grail Reliquae, so that's really going to be the anchor of their strategy. Whereas the Bretonnian army, I think, is just going to be more utilitarian, protecting with Cav on the flanks and maybe dealing with some counter harass with peasants and some of their archers. But I think it's really going to come down to the performance of the Trolls. But Trolls, they were probably thinking there was going to be Black Orcs and Savage Orcs and things like that. And the Chaos Armor Trolls definitely do very well against Black Orcs if they can stay in combat. But against Gobos, they're not going to be as effective because they just come in such high numbers, and they have Withering Fire from the Rusty Airs and Goblin Firing Squads. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this army composition works out here. Chaos Sorcerer Lord, Fey Enchantress, and that's pretty much it for Team Brohammer. And now for the Fighting Mongooses. Definitely the heroes of this match so far with these this mass goblin build. So we got Nasty Skulkers over here, some Night Goblins, Durkit Squigs, Forest Goblin Spider Riders. I mean, basically just mass goblin hordes. I mean, with the core of Nasty Skulkers, probably expecting Chaos to bring some armored infantry, so you definitely need that AP, but they are going to be supported by the Regiments of Renown, so it looks like both players do have all of the Regiments of Renown with the Gobos. We have a Goblin Great Shaman here on the far side, and then another Goblin Great Shaman, so double wolf shenanigans. They could have Vanguard deployed these guys, because a lot of people don't actually know that the Goblin Great Shaman does have Vanguard deployment, which is pretty absurd. And traditional Goblin Firing Squads, Durkit Squig Hoppers, Night Goblin Squig Hoppers to deal with the infantry. And just, it's going to be a madhouse, guys. So without further ado, let's get this show on the road. So over here in the front, you can see the Fighting Mongooses getting some pretty good skirmishing in with Death's Creepers, but that Chaos Sorcerer Lord, it looks like, man, he roasted a lot of those guys right there. And T. Brohammer is going to be chasing them off right here with this Chaos Lord. Yeah, it looks like they are going to be rallying. Still have 39 models of their 60, so they can put out some decent output. You can see the Teef robbers over here getting ready to rob some Teef, shooting into those Bretonnian peasants with their just little ghetto Walmart arrows there. And yeah, they're doing their best. And it looks like there are 2 groups of the Teef robbers here, so make sure, well, I was about to say, make sure to remind me, guys, but we're not actually live on stream here, so I'll have to remember to look at their kills after the match. So the Bretonnians and Warriors of Chaos from Team Brohammer are going to be advancing here, taking some skirmish from the Gobos, but the Hell Cannon, and I actually like that they brought Peasant Bowmen to deal with the, counter skirmish, and it looks like the Teef robbers are just getting deep into it, not caring about the Chaos Trolls or any other threats here, just charging into these Chaos Warriors. But man, this could potentially be very ugly. These Trolls are fast. I think they have like 40. Why are they so slow? They're actually poisoned, but I think their base speed is like 54. But let's see if the Teef robbers can get away. They haven't really taken any damage yet, and they did a little bit of HP damage. They're not really like a heavy armor-piercing chariot, so not going to do a ton of work. But The Peasant Bowmen from Team Brohammer shooting into the Death's Creepers over here, bringing them down to 42 models, but you can see the Gabo Hordes, they have actually a whole firing battery over here of Doomdiver Catapults. They're shooting into these men-at-arms with polearms and doing some really substantial damage, and it looks like these peasants are meat's back on the menu, boys. So the Squigs and Goblin Wolf Riders are going to be charging into these peasants here and just feasting on their souls. You can see peasants flying into air. They're wavering, and they're definitely going to rout there, but I mean, it's only like 100 gold, and you can see the Goblin Great Shaman coming over. But, you know, eventually these Chaos Forces are going to get to the front line of the Gabos, and that is just going to be some heavy, heavy pressure from those Chaos Trolls. Let's see what the Grail Reliquaries are. So I think there was supposed to be one with these Chaos Trolls. It looks like they may have fallen out of formation a little bit. I'm trying to find them. It looks like there is one here, so it should be affecting this main fight. But the Aspiring Champions are going to be advancing first, perhaps to waste some of that ammunition, as they do have silver shields and very good armor. But the Doomdiver Catapults continuing to do some pretty good work against the Grail Knights. You can see these brave Gabos are going to be flying in and just tagging those guys in the back, bringing them down to 35 models, very reminiscent of some Total War Warhammer 1 tactics. The Grail Reliquary getting a little bit ahead of itself, but you can see that these Halberds as well as these Chaos Trolls are going to be pushing in, but the Gabo Firing Squad can definitely put some really good hurting on these Chaos Trolls. If you get the Armor Sundering from the Rusty Arrows, and it looks like over here, Team Brohammer did use a Fate of Unit and this Hell Cannon to shoot into the Gabos. Oh man, just carnage! You can see the Fate of Unit just get like wrecking these guys, and on top of that, a Hell Cannon shot with a direct hit, just putting these Rusty Arrows in a trash can, and they might even waver off the battlefield. So very well played by Team Brohammer, realizing that's, you know, of everything on the battlefield, this is one of the more substantial threats to those Armored Trolls here. So the Chaos Forces are advancing in here. You can see the Aspiring Champions are coming in. These Chaos Trolls, I think, are going to be not far behind. And Aspiring Champs, not so good against Black Orcs and traditional greenskins, but against Gabos, they are really good. They have solid splash damage. You can see some of those Gabos are flying. Some of the Bretonnian Knights probably just deciding they just want to crumple the front line of the Goblins rather than, you know, mess around on the flanks. But the Durkit Squig Hoppers, or just regular Squig Hoppers, do have decent AP, so they can put a bit of a dent in those guys. It's not going to be huge, but we'll see how it does. So big Gabo blob right here, Night Goblin Squig Hoppers, and then also there's a Goblin Great Shaman and a Big Boss. A lot of the elite Goblin forces are trying to fend off these Chaos Trolls, but the Trolls plus the Bretonnian Knights should be able to. You can see they're just kicking these Goblins just like little vermin around their feet, which is pretty funny, throwing up on some of the lads, which I'm sure they don't appreciate. But the Chaos Lord here taking a bit of damage. You can see that there was some sort of Gabo witchcraft going down on him. I think there was actually like a Gorkle Fix-It or something, which was slowing him. I can't remember what it was. And are the Doomdiver Catapults trying to snipe the Chaos Lord? Let's actually see where they're going. I think it's going into this blob here. And yeah, just a lot of chaos. So the Peasant Archers from Bretonnia getting a pretty good backline position, just shooting into these Night Goblins. But it looks like some of the Squig Hoppers are just going to be pouncing through. Some of these Chaos Trolls are actually shattered, so down to 5 models despite the Grail Reliquary. They must have taken a couple volleys from those Goblin Firing Squad. So they're going to be retreating off the battlefield right now, most likely. Well, 100% they are shattered, so. But the Chaos Infantry blob is still in somewhat decent health. You can see 75 Chaos Warriors here. These Aspiring Champions have racked up 17 kills and are holding strong with the Grail Reliquary. So basically, you're getting the encouragement from the Aspiring Champions. Aspiring Champions, that's what they should be called. The Aspiring Champions here that are going to be encouraging the Chaos Trolls, plus the Grail Reliquary here, and that's keeping them at, yeah, I guess they're at around 40 leadership, whereas, you know, they might almost be close to being broken in, under normal circumstances. So the Fey Enchantress using the Arcane Conduit to kind of buff things up. You can see the Goblins are in a bit of a mass exodus. There's a lot of Night Goblins and troops kind of running back here, but that's very normal. For anyone who's actually gone onto ladder or tried to play Goblins competitively as like a pure faction, they do tend to rout quite a bit. So basically one of the keys to success is just being really good at rallying your troops. Once you notice they're back, you've got to get them back in the fight as soon as possible. So over here, Nasty Skulkers and the boys, it looks like they are getting a Sword of Anti-Heroes on that Chaos Sorcerer Lord. You don't see that get brought too often. But he's trying to fight all these Gabos here, and some of these Nasty Skulkers are going against these Chaos Warriors and Bretonnian Knights. Definitely a very good engagement for the Gabos here, because you're getting the poison from these regular Night Goblins. And yeah, the Bretonnian Knights just getting dragged down by those guys, and it looks like they are terror-routed, or are they hunting the Chaos Lord? I'm not sure. Looks like they're actually shaken and just being rerouted somewhere else on the battlefield. So a relatively even fight. It looks like for the first time in the battle, the Warriors of Chaos and Bretonnians are kind of taking the lead here. And yeah, the Gobos are just looking a little bit tattered, and with 2 Goblin Great Shamans, they're not going to have a lot of stopping power in terms of their leadership. It's more supporting magic type stuff. These Chaos Trolls, obviously in very good shape, and it looks like they have gotten back to the Doomdiver Catapult. Some of these Forsaken also laying a bit of a beating on these poor Gobos. And I love the Troll Kicks. That's probably one of my favorite animations in the game. So yeah, it looks like the Doomdiver Catapults are pretty much offline, so that's going to take a lot of power away, but they still did a lot of work against the Peasant Bowmen, and as you guys saw earlier in the game, the Doomdiver Catapults were doing a lot of work against those Grail Knights. But from here, I don't really think there's much of a chance for the Gobos to come back. I mean, they have the Teeth Robbers riding around, robbing some teeth. It looks like they've gotten 24 sets of teeth. But these Bretonnian Knights have, wanted to have a word with them, and yeah, they're just going to get massacred here. This Chaos Sorcerer Lord is also in pretty good shape, and that's definitely tough. I mean, he's someone that could have potentially been taken out earlier in the game with the Rusty Airs, but there was a lot of targets they needed to take out, with those Chaos Trolls actually becoming a threat with those Grail Relic Waves. So the Goblin Great Shaman here, he's you know, in his final fight, and it looks like he's actually on foot. Just look how ridiculous he looks amongst those Chaos Warriors. So he is not going to last long. He's going to waver and break here. And let's see what else. So Goblins here, got some Night Goblins in the back, some Rusty Airs, or some Nasty Skulkers, excuse me. Doing a really good job against these Chaos Warriors. They might actually be able to beat them, which would be quite impressive for the Gobos. Doom and Darkness going down on this guy. It's going to put him down to 2 leadership. And from there, the Warriors of Chaos should be able to chase him off the battlefield. Over here, there is a bit of resistance from the Gobos. You can see the firing squad has reformed ranks. It's shooting into these Bretonnian Knights who are going after this other Goblin Great Shaman, who is actually on a wolf. So he's going to be a little bit more maneuverable, but he's also going to suffer against the anti-large here. But definitely a very valiant effort from the Gobos here, trying to take out those Bretonians. It looks like there's just a ton of Chaos Trolls left that are probably just going to push through. Like I said earlier, Chaos Trolls are a very fast unit, so it's going to be tough to deal with those guys. So from here, we can just go ahead and fast forward, as I know there's a little bit of an extension of this game because there are some unbreakable Goblin units, but very well played. So that brings the series to 1-1. Team Brohammer with Bretonia and the Warriors of Chaos taking Game 2 against the Bloody Hands Mass Gobbo build. So let's go ahead and take a look at the breakdown, guys, and see what's going on. So this was another one of the compositions that I definitely thought would be pretty cool, using Aspiring Champions and the Grail Relic Waves to keep those Armored Chaos Trolls, but we didn't really get to see them in an environment in which they're good anyways. I mean, against Mass Goblins and wide armies, Trolls aren't very good. They're more meant against like Elite Infantry, Black Orcs, Chaos Warriors, things like that. So I feel like we didn't really get to see their true potential, but I definitely like that quite a bit. You know, using a very aggressive army, you don't really have to worry too much about missile play. You just get in there with the Trolls and have the support of the Bretonian Knights and some of their utility units like Peasant Bowmen and Men-at-Arms to give you some really good anti-large. Definitely some cool stuff. So yeah, very well played to Team Brohammer. And for the Fighting Mongooses, definitely heroes for bringing this into a tournament here. The double Bloody Hands, and apparently they had played before. Lickanen here, who is one of the participants here on the Fighting Mongooses, was actually telling me they had used this exact composition before between Jonton and Sakarma, and it had worked. So they wanted to try it again and see if they could make the magic happen again. But alas, the Gobos put up a great fight, but they weren't able to win the day. So very well played to both players. And guys, we are going to Game 3 in this King of the Tomb Invitational Showdown, opening round showdown, I should say. So stay tuned, guys, and we'll see you in Game 3. And now we're here with the third and final match in the showdown between Team Brohammer and the Fighting Mongooses in the King of the Tomb Invitational. So for Team Brohammer, it looks like we're going to be seeing the Empire and the Dwarves teaming up. And it looks like the Empire is going to be taking care of the mobility. A very, very heavy core of Pistoliers. So there's Pistoliers in the front line here. Looks like he does also have 2 Witch Hunters. Definitely a very powerful pick, as we have all seen on the channel. And they're going to be led by the mighty Balthazar Gelt. So essentially, the Empire is going to be handling the mobility, as I said, Pistoliers, a couple groups of Empire Knights. Man, I haven't seen those guys in quite some time. But honestly, for like 850 gold, Empire Knights are pretty good against like factions like Beastmen. So if you have more elite units like Reichsguard and, you know, Pistoliers and things like that to deal with Centaurs, Empire Knights can be pretty good at charging down like low-tier Beastmen infantry like Ungor herds and troops like that, simply because Ungors have really, really bad armor-piercing values, and Empire Knights, wow, they have 110 armor? Is that like a recent change or something? I feel like that's pretty darn good. So 2 Empire Knights here. It looks like he does have some Outriders to bring some additional AP, just in case they decided to go with like Durthu or things like that over there. So just kind of keeping it honest. We do have Knights of the Blazing Sun, a backline of Flagellants and Spearmen, but essentially the Dwarves are going to be doing the heavy lifting as it pertains to the mainline army. So for the Fighting Mongooses, they're going to be going Wood Elves. They got some Wild Riders over here, and Wood Elves Beastmen, of course. A couple of groups of Glade Riders with Hagbane's Hips, so somewhat similar in that the Beastmen are going to be handling the main infantry. The Wood Elves are going to be handling mobility and harassment with Sisters of Thorn. So definitely some cool stuff. So for the rest of the Wood Elf army, some Azurai Spears. They have a Spellsinger with Lore of Life, which can heal the Beastmen. So definitely, you know, addressing one of the weaknesses of the Beastmen, the fact they don't have any healing. So I like that quite a bit. And guys, we got Mel Gibson on the battlefield, ready to try and clinch this rubber match game in this finals here. So he's ready to go. He's got the Cloak Visha and his other abilities, Azurai Spears, and some more Wild Riders. So definitely some cool stuff. So for the Beastmen, relatively low-tier troops, though. So Ungor herds, things like that, going very wide with some Raiders, some Bestigor herds in the back, which when I was first looking at the army, I was like, ooh, how are they going to deal with the Dwarves? But Bestigor herds plus some of these chariots. It looks like there are Razor Gore chariots here. There's a Gorbel, Kazarak on a chariot. He also has a Bray Shaman on a chariot. So he should have, you know, a decent amount of AP to deal with that Dwarven force. So definitely some cool stuff here. So without further ado, guys, let's get the show on the road. So in the back, you can also see the fighting Mongooses do have a very heavy vanguard. Look at this. They got some centaurs with great weapons and some poison hounds, maybe looking to pin down some of these Empire skirmishers. So the Pistoliers took a, it looks like, wow, those Sisters of Thorn are just getting decimated by the Jawi forces. So the dwarves do have double cannons up on the high ground, protected by Dragonback Slayers. These Rangers just teeing off on these wild riders over here, but man, that cannon just did a ton of work against the Sisters. And here come the Pistoliers. So the Pistoliers are just charging, just Rough Rider style. And it looks like they're probably going to do some pretty good work against these guys. Oh, look at that volley, just tearing those guys up, just brutality. It actually didn't do as much damage as it looked like because of that initial spray, but still not bad. I mean, getting some decent value. You can see the Empire is going to pull through with their Knights of the Blazing Sun, and it looks like the Wood Elves did not notice this, and these Hagbane tips are going to charge right into these erect Knights of the Blazing Sun. Oh man, they're just going to tear into these the light armor on these guys. They only have 15 armor, so that's going to be very ugly for them. So the Pistoliers also taking a little bit of damage, but there's Outriders shooting in, just tons of chaos coming in. And of course the Dwarven Rangers are providing some pretty good overwatch here. And the Wild Riders with shields do charge in to intercept the Knights of the Blazing Sun, but pretty much one of the hardest counters to Wild Riders is going to be Heavy Cav. So right now the Beastmen forces are collapsing. Looks like the Empire Cav and the War Dancers, or the Empire Cav, is going to be trying to get in there and protect those guys, but it looks like the fighting Mongooses are able to catch those Witch Hunters. But guys, here comes the trap. So basically they sent all of their forces. The 2 Witch Hunters were on the ground. I don't know if this was intentional here, but the Witch Hunters get caught and surrounded by the Beastmen. So Khazrak, these chariots, but an overcasted final transmutation is going to be going down on all of these troops. So it's going to be hitting Khazrak. It's going to be hitting the Spellsinger. It's just going to melt those guys. So definitely a decent bait there if it was intended. But it looks like right now the dwarves are just going to be reforming a little bit, just staying very stationary, not wanting to, you know, go and help the outside world. And the Empire forces are just going to be kind of skirmishing and trying to draw them into the Jawi here. You can see the Pistoliers getting some decent overwatch here, but man, that overcasted final transmutation bringing down the Spray Shaman pretty low. Also the Gorbel, and Khazrak didn't take a lot of damage as he wasn't the primary target, but still very, very good value. One of the Witch Hunters did go down. The other one is, you know, for Team Brohammer, luckily able to escape here. Now you can see the Best of Wars and more elite troops are coming in, but the Rangers have reformed ranks behind the Empire, but a very good flank over here by the fighting Mongooses, getting some of those Wild Riders up from hidden. I think they were actually hidden in the trees over there, but they get right on those Pistoliers and are just taking those guys down. So this is definitely anyone's game at this point. Very, very close. So the Dwarven forces have moved out of their turtling hole over here, and they are going to be pushing over and engaging the Beastmen. So you can see the Dwarven Lords are going to be fighting hand in hand with these Empire Knights. Some of the Grumbling Guard coming through, and the Best Scores definitely taking a lot of shock damage from that Dwarven charge. The Runesmith, I mean, Dwarves don't have a good charge bonus, but still it's impactful to have this many troops come into conflict here. So the Runesmith pops the Rune of Negation, the Rune of Wrath and Ruin on those Bestigor herds. Definitely going to do some work. And man, it looks like the Beastmen and Wood Elves are getting very tattered. Sisters of Thorn are pretty beat up. Those guys are, you know, a lot of these skirmish cav from the Wood Elves are gone. You can see their cav are being chased down by the heavy Knights of the Empire, so that's definitely tough. Knights of the Blazing Sun and, you know, Reiksguard and even Empire Knights can perform very well against Wild Riders. So, but the Wild Riders still aren't a bad pick. I mean, getting into the back line, their mobility, and had the Empire brought like handgunners and things like that, you need some mobile units like that to really pressure them. So the Beastmen do have Centaurs with great weapons and hounds here, but it looks like the Empire is just going to be collapsing from all angles. You can see Knights of the Blazing Sun, Empire Knights, and some of these Dwarf infantry are going to be colliding with these Beastmen troops here. So it's definitely, I mean, I guess it's not a battle of good versus evil, but I mean, I guess Dwarves and Empire are usual allies. So the Centaurs are pretty much surrounded here. The Poison Hounds are retreating. You can see there's some cannon fire coming in from the Dwarves here. So just absolute anarchy, but the Beastmen are definitely going to lose out on their mobility here. This is a huge, huge loss. The Centaurs with great weapons were one of the few options they really had for taking out those heavy cav of the Empire, but unfortunately they do get surrounded. There's a Witch Hunter. Balthazar Gelt is up in the air cackling, and it's looking pretty wild. In the back, you can see the fighting Mongooses getting the Wild Riders and trying to catch these Pistoliers, but Pistoliers have 90 speed compared to the 85 of Wild Riders, and they are going to be shooting their pistols. They're dual wield, and they look pretty ridiculous when you actually see them shoot, but yeah, they're able to fend off those Wild Riders, and you can see the fighting Mongooses, realizing they probably couldn't catch those guys, are going to be pulling back. In the meantime, the Dwarf Cannons providing some pretty good overwatch here, just sitting in the hill unimpeded, a very good kind of Jawi defensive formation with the Slayers. Nobody wants to mess with them. The answer to dealing with these Slayers would have been the Skirmisher Cav from the Wood Elves, but they've just been taken out by Rangers and Cannons and just all kinds of other shenanigans. So, in the main fight here, you can see the Jawi Elite, so the Runesmith, and who do they have for a lord? It looks like Grombrindal, the White Dwarf, is going to be leading the Grumbling Guard around the battlefield, obviously just cleaving holes in the Beastmen infantry. It looks like they might be engaging some of these Bestigor here. These Bestigor, are they? Yeah, it looks like maybe they're trying to catch those guys, but they're probably just going to turn and fight here. But the Rangers are in pretty good shape. They are being protected by some Longbeards, and the Gorbel kind of having a little bit of trouble finding a home here. And man, those Rangers just teeing off on Kazarak. You can see he has 100 HP, he's down to 96. The cannons are coming in, and let's see if him and his Hogger. Oh man, he just put a juke on that cannonball, it looks like. But I think we just have to follow this for the sake of the game here. And here comes a cannon shot right into him, and down goes Kazarak. He is down for the count. The Dwarven cannons have taken out the Beastman Lord this day. So if we look, it looks like the Empire and the it looks like the Empire and the Dwarves are in pretty good shape. Orion Mel Gibson is being accused of heresy here. Balthazar Gelt flies overhead, maybe looking to cast another final transmutation. But I think that's going to be it. I mean, Orion isn't terribly durable against missile fire. You can see the Pistoliers are shooting him. He's got about 1,500 HP. And he is going to be going after the Switch Hunter. Looks like he just runs in and bro checks him real quick, but let's see how this goes. Man, he's got his power hooves, but man, look at that firepower coming in. Is that friendly fire from those Ungor Raiders back there? I think so. So at this point, that's going to be it, guys. Team Brohammer wins this series 2-1 and will be advancing to the semifinals, where they will face my team, the Walking Haggard. So Professor Pone and I are going to be facing Jonton and Sakarma. That's definitely going to be fun. As far as the other semifinals go, we're going to be having I think it's Team Janet and Gabo. So Team Jag is going to be facing off against Loremaster of Sotek and Dob Plays with Team Ola Skinks. So very well played, and a big thanks to both of these teams for joining the tournament. It's definitely been quite a bit of fun. These were some of the more chaotic games, I must admit. The compositions, it was a little bit tough to see what was going on at times, but it was definitely still fun seeing Mel Gibson and Orion and all those guys in action. So yeah, again, very well played to Team Brohammer, Jonton and Sakarma. Make sure to go check out their YouTube channel, which is Total Brohammer. They put up tournament casts, all kinds of good stuff like that. So well played to those guys, and also very well played to the Fighting Mongooses, who might be some of the unsung heroes of our tournament, bringing the Bloody Hands, double Bloody Hands, double Mass Goblins in a tournament. Definitely a bold strategy, Cotton. It almost paid off, but yeah, definitely cheers to those guys, and big thanks to Litkin and Singularity for playing. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that, and we will see you guys in the semifinals. Take care.